Hello, everybody. Today's Insight with On Target, what's in our sights today, is Cuomo's Fireside Chats. And why I'm calling it that, I'll tell you in a minute. But first of all, if you, like most Americans, have been watching TV, glued to the TV for the past week or so, I'm sure that you've seen the press conferences that New York Governor Andrew Cuomo has been giving, and he's been getting some very good reviews on this. And I think it's largely because he's coming across in a very personal way, a warm, human way, talking in common terms, not talking at the people, but to the people. That New York accent and the expressions that once were, he was kind of made fun with about that. It's working for him now. It reminds me of Al Pacino with his kind of real person, warmth type of approach, and it's coming across with him as well. Now, on the air the other day, he had his daughter sitting next to him, as you could see, and he used her as an example for all parents that are going through a similar situation with their kids. He says, I am the governor of the state of New York. I could order this, order that, but I can't tell my daughter anything. She won't listen. And meaning by that she wants to socialize, she still wants to go out with her friends and all that, despite his warnings that she should not do that, because he says young people should know this if they don't, that they are also vulnerable. So that was a personal touch. Then he brings in the name of his mother, Matilda, and he says it's Matilda's law, which is in contrast to what Trump has been saying. He says old people are not disposable. We can't just sacrifice them, say, hey, they're compromised anyway, they're up in age, they're going to die, so, we can't sacrifice the economy in order to save a few of these infirm, old, excess people. I mean, those weren't exactly Trump's words, but people are taking it in that sense. So Cuomo is saying, by contrast, Matilda's law means that my mother, Matilda, is not disposable. Your mother is not disposable, pointing to the audience, the television audience, saying, my brother and sister is not disposable, and neither are yours. So he's saying that what we've got to do is work on this together, wait until the curve is flattened, and then think about opening up America again and its economy along with it, but not yet. Now, this whole approach, the folksy approach, talking down to earth and all that, in a time of crisis, what does that remind you of? Well, if you go back in American history with another New York governor who became president in a time of crisis, was Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Now, he became president after being New York's governor, like Cuomo, after the crash of 29, and we're in a deep depression in the 30s. He comes in and he has his, what were dubbed at the time, fireside chats. Now, that was the first time the U.S. president had used the mass media in such a way, talking before a vast radio audience and talking in such personal terms. Now, he was still from the East Coast elite establishment. He came from money in upstate New York. He was high class, and the accent was there as well, the high class accent. Yet, he talked in terms that the common man was not offended by, understood, and that class difference melted because of his personal skills. Now, Cuomo is even more folksy than Roosevelt was, and that's coming across even better. So again, these were Roosevelt's fireside chats during a time of crisis, similar to what we have today. And his audience back then, of course, before TV, was radio. People in their living rooms all across America, and there was a lot of radios at the time. I think it was practically 90% of the households had radios. That was the medium of the time. And everybody would gather around for Roosevelt's fireside chats to hear his reassuring voice, to hear him tell that the only thing we have to fear is fear itself. Now, he used that line in his first fireside chat when he was talking about the banking crisis. There was a run on the banks, so he closed the banks temporarily, called it a bank holiday, so that people would simmer down, banks would be able to get reserve cash in their vaults to hand out to people who wanted to take their money out of the bank. Similar to the scene that you've had, I'm sure a movie you all know, many of you know, it's played every Christmas, is It's a Wonderful Life with Jimmy Stewart, where they ran a small town bank and all their formerly friendly, loyal, longtime customers in the town suddenly were demanding their money and they couldn't meet it either. So Roosevelt closed the bank holiday, and it straightened out after that. So it was a whole series of fireside chats with a radio audience listening in. Today, of course, it is a television audience. And back to Andrew Cuomo now, because he's connecting, and it's not just liberals who are saying that. Even some conservative people are talking about that. And Trump himself, he reportedly said, yeah, he's doing pretty good. And I think he's probably envious with the competition because now Andrew Cuomo has a national audience because his chats are being broadcast on the cable news networks nationally. He's been on every day. So he's got growing popularity here now. And I think the party regulars, and perhaps he himself, are thinking that he is being positioned now for a run for the presidency. Now, I don't think there was any necessarily plan beforehand behind this. It just has all come together for him now, where the party regulars who are thinking about Biden and how he's coming across are thinking that maybe Andrew is a guy who could step in because they had Biden on the air just the other day. He was talking from his basement in his Delaware home. He looked ashen. He looked unprepared. He looked like he had just gotten out of bed. They had roused him from bed, threw him in front of the cameras. No makeup that made him look hearty and hale, robust, anything like that. And he came off again as kind of a guy who, is this the guy who's ready to assume the presidency? So if this continues, and if Biden looks even more tottering and fragile, Andrew Cuomo could be perhaps brought on as Biden's vice presidential candidate. Now, this would only happen if the crisis has subsided, is over, and Cuomo gets credit for handling it well. Because if he decides to go in for a presidential or vice presidential run before that, he'll be accused of abandoning New York State. So, assuming that the crisis is over and Biden keeps limping towards the nomination, either he'll come on as vice president with Biden to reassure the public that there's a strong, vigorous vice president to step in case something happens to Biden if he becomes elected president, or if Biden does get the presidency, Cuomo is there to step in case he becomes infirm during the presidency. So either way, people are talking about this already. Social media, one of the trending hashtags now is President Cuomo and Cuomo 2020. So what does that tell you? Social media, which is now very powerful as an influencer in America beyond what you're seeing on TV, it's all working for Andrew Cuomo. So could Andrew Cuomo, governor of New York, like another previous governor of New York, become president of the United States? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us.